All right. Hello, 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 everyone. We got people. Oh, we got a fair number of people here. So I am wearing my face mask. And why is that? It's because I'm shy. Yeah, I realized just a little while ago that I haven't been out in public since I shaved my beard off. So I'm afraid I'm terrified. You're going to all laugh at me when I take this off. Even my students haven't seen me without a mask because I'm always wearing it over there in the university. So here we are. Okay, I'll be brave. I will take it off. I feel like a stripper. I'm exposing my naked face, but yeah, there I am. I know. I'm not used to it either. This is just what I look like. Okay, anyway, so what am I doing here? Well, I am currently on this schedule where in order to maintain my class and flexibility and all this kind of good stuff, I am required to teach in person, but I'm also providing asynchronous access to my lectures. So I'm recording them all and putting them on YouTube, which means right now I'm putting lectures on 3 times a week. So suddenly my YouTube output has shot up to about 3 hours a week. Of course, it's not very exciting output. It's me lecturing about basic materials and genetics. And I've intentionally made the title pages kind of boring, just a white screen with text, because I'm not trying to encourage lots of people to come look at it. It's mainly there because I have this expectation that at some point in this semester, everything is going to fall apart, that students are going to get sick, or I'm going to get sick, or the university is going to go on lockdown, and I have to have a contingency plan so that I can, gracefully cope with that and keep the class going so that students can get their credits and graduate and all this good stuff. So that's what I'm working on. One of the downsides of that, another of the downsides of that, is I had a student tell me the other day that when she listens to my voice on YouTube, it puts her to sleep, and she recommended that I start making ASMR videos. Okay. I don't know how to take that. Was that a compliment? She seems like a nice student. I probably, but oh, okay. So anyway, for the rest of the video, I'm going to be talking very low and soft. Maybe I should make some strange noises. Are you all excited? No. Okay. Let's be normal. Okay. So anyway, what I thought I'd talk about today is just some of these oddball things that have come up, and a little bit of science, and yeah, there's these weird things that I don't know what's happening to this country, because it's just strange how much stupidity is frolicking on media, and it's kind of embarrassing. It's an American to see this going on. So let's charge into some things. I want to talk about. Let's see, what have I got here? I got Jordan Peterson, and I know everybody's seen this already, right? But I'm gonna throw it up here again anyway. Let's see, where did I put it? I have not used Zoom in months because we're all in person or asynchronous right now. So we'll see how well this works. Okay. Come on. I'm giving it a moment to make sure it's all working. Oh, Zachary, you're excited because you're not in school anymore. And that brings it all back. Oh, I don't know. A lot of students would say, no, that's terrible. Okay, so here we go. So I'm gonna, oh wait, I bet you I didn't. Let me just back off for a minute. I have to do it again. We'll get it. Oh no, it was good. Okay. I do kind of know what I'm doing. I'm happy to say. All right, so anyway, this is Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. And Jesus Christ, this is appalling. This is so awesomely stupid. So let's just hear what old Jordan has to say. I might interrupt this a few times.
Hard to sort out. The climate change one is a weird one. So
that well, that's because there's no such thing as climate, right? Climate and everything are the same word.
Right there, his first sentence. No, that's not true. That's just wrong. Climate and everything are not the same words. They don't mean the same thing. Climate is not equivalent to everything. So already we're seeing a lot of foolishness. Okay.
And that's what bothers me about the climate change types. It's like
the climate change types. You know what those are? The climate scientists.
This is something that bothers me about it technically. It's like, well, climate is about everything. So, okay. But your models aren't based on everything. Your models are based on a set number of variables.
Yeah.
So that means you've reduced the variables, which are everything, to that set.
Now, how do you reduce the variables to a particular set? You do it empirically. You do some theoretical work to estimate what was important in, for instance, for climate, you might say, okay, greenhouse gases, what are the CO2 concentrations? What are the methane concentrations? Let's see if we can correlate those to global temperatures, and let's model that. And then, of course, you have to start throwing in these other relevant variables, like what's the effect of the ocean on moderating changes in climate? There's all these things that you incrementally add to get an increasing precision and accuracy.
Well, how did you decide which set of variables to include in the equation?
You decided by looking at the data. This is apparently how Jordan Peterson operates. He thinks you just make things up, and you just charge in with a model of some sort. No, that's not how you do it.
About everything. And that's not just a criticism. That's like, if it's about everything, your models aren't right.
It's not about everything.
Okay. Because your models do not and cannot model everything.
What do you mean by everything?
Okay, that's enough. I mean, this was an amazing flame out by Jordan Peterson. Everyone noticed that he is talking out of his butt on this subject, that he knows nothing about. Well, he knows nothing about climate. He clearly knows nothing about modeling, and this implies he knows nothing about science. And there he is talking to credulous old Joe Rogan, who's going to be a yes man for whatever it was, an hour, a couple hours. Not at all impressive on his part. Now, the thing is, after this interview came out, boom, social media exploded, because if you look at science Twitter, for instance, there are all these people that are just aghast. How can he say these things? That's just such crass ignorance. And they jumped all over him. Guess how Jordan Peterson reacts to that, though? He came out on Twitter with this. So a little later, he announces he's going to double down, right? So he declares the past has already happened, but the future is different. Models might be educated hypotheses, but they are still hypotheses, not facts, not the science, and certainly not data. All of that is wrong. There's nothing wrong with hypotheses. You can't discredit something by saying it's a hypothesis. That simply means that you have proposed an idea, and if it's a valid hypothesis, that means that you're also thinking about ways to test it. Immediately upon hearing a hypothesis, that's what scientists do, is think about ways to test it. Hypothesis is not a fact, but the observations that make up that hypothesis are facts. And yes, that's the science. So, and he says, and they accumulate error across long time spans. No, it's exactly the opposite. As we test models, they become refined and they get better and better. And if they don't get better, then we reject the whole model. We go back to the drawing board and figure out what's going on there. So this is just amazing. Yeah, he's got a PhD in psychology. It's Jungian psychology, though, so it's really just kind of mysticism. But yeah, on my blog, I wrote a post about this, and I just said, will this kill his career? It ought to. He has retired from the university, so he's gotten out. He never did great work to begin with. His books are just absurd. So will this kill his career? No, it won't, because his career has never rested on understanding science or communicating science clearly. His career has rested entirely on being extremely confident about whatever brain fart he has. Yeah, so no, this is terrible stuff. I'm just in awe. Maybe I should start saying stupid things so I can make as much money as Jordan Peterson. Yeah, stupid things seem to be a key to success. So I want to mention one other thing, just to change topics a little bit. Before I change topics, is there any questions people have in here? Any comments I should recite? Well, their side just makes things up, so why can't right. Boomer U mentions the models are huge. Yeah, they need supercomputers to go through these things because they've got so much that they're tracking, and they're constantly making predictions and correlating the results of their predictions with the outcomes that they actually observe. Okay. Oh, we got a mention of Neil Young. Yeah, I should mention Neil Young too. Yeah, I've long been an admirer of Neil Young. I first started listening to him in 1975 with his Zuma album, which was just excellent. Some things are kind of a little bit flaky and weird, but that's his character. Okay, he's not pretending to be a scientist or anything. So I just thoroughly enjoyed it. And before that, I would have said, no, I'm never going to listen to Neil Young. That guy with that whiny voice that can barely hold a tune. But then, you start listening to it and the lyrics are great. And he's got an attitude. I love that in the music. So anyway, yeah, Neil Young protested the inclusion of Joe Rogan on Spotify by demanding that he be released and his music not appear on Spotify. So there's another reason not to listen to Spotify. The fact that Joe Rogan is on it and the fact that Neil Young isn't. Yes. So anyway, to get to my point, so it seems like you can say really stupid things and become successful. And just today, I ran into another example of this. So I'm changing gears a little bit. Let's look at somebody else. Let's look at, let me put him up here. See if anybody recognizes him. Yeah. Anyone recognize that bozo? This is Matt Powell, the young Christian preacher who recently linked up with Kent Hovind and has been pushing really stupid young earth creationism ideas all over the place. And oh man, He's terrible. Ken Hovind tends to put out these huge hour-long or 2-hour-long rambling videos in which he's talking with his audience, and it's pretty much not worth listening to. I will say this for Matt Powell: he comes out with these little short 5-minute videos that are still just as stupid, but I don't have to waste an hour trying to get through them. So yeah, there's good old Matt Powell, and he came up with this video just recently. It's titled "Atheist YouTubers Are Stuck in Fantasy Land." And the entire thing is Matt Powell just kept going off on all those atheist YouTubers who have video games in their background, or action figures, like SpongeBob, or posters and all this kind of stuff. He just totally disrespects that. So let me just play a little. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but let's listen to a little bit of this guy.
Dragon Ball Z in the background, or Star Fox. I mean, to me, it's a dead giveaway. We're dealing with a crowd of people that are literally stuck in their childhood, and they've never grown out of it. But of course, this is the first crowd to tell us that the Bible's wrong. This is the first crowd to come to tell us that dinosaurs farted them.
Wait, before I go in here. So he thinks it's a mark of shame that some YouTubers actually like to play video games or read comic books or see Marvel movies. He's basically shaming people for their hobbies. He's also doing some selective analysis here, because most of the YouTubers I follow don't get into that stuff. It's just that, one of the ways to get successful in acquiring viewers and growing your channel on YouTube is to get interested in pop culture, to talk about pop culture. So you'll find that you can find lots of YouTubers who are interested in pop culture and regularly put videos up about it. And they also go after creationists because they're goofy. Okay, so that's one thing that's going on here. All right, so he's complaining about all these shallow, immature YouTubers, unlike little mini me Matt. And then he's going to tell us all these great arguments against evolution that make evolution look stupid.
Crowd to come to tell us that dinosaurs farted themselves to death.
Okay, that's one. He says these papers say that dinosaurs farted themselves to death.
Or that squids and octopi rode on a comet from outer space.
He's talked about this one a lot. Number two is that squids came from space. That scientists seriously believe this. How stupid!
Into our Earth and crash landed to evolve and to continue their evolution on Earth. Of course, the crowd that tells us that the Bible is incorrect and that Jesus was just a man and not God is the very crowd that believes that monkeys made a sea voyage from Africa to South America on rafts. That they literally surfed from Africa to South America. One guy responded to me.
Okay, this is the third one. He ridicules the idea that animals might have surfed across the ocean to colonize new lands, new mainlands, new islands, all these sorts of things, which is kind of a standard thing in evolutionary theory. Well, in more than that, in observations of evolutionary history, that happens. Yeah, how do you think the Galapagos got colonized by those iguanas, and also by those finches? The ongoing observations suggest that roughly 5 or 6 million years ago, South American mainland iguanas were blown across the Pacific Ocean, 1,000 miles or so to the Galapagos Islands, on storm-blown bits of the forest. Trees fall down, you get a whole bunch of brush, It makes a natural kind of raft. These sorts of things have been observed. That in major storms, you'll often find things like, big floating rafts of debris, and you can find animals living on them. And the idea is that 5 or 6 million years ago, these animals drifted across the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean in this case, that's how New World monkeys populated the New World, is hitching a ride. It's really not a shocking idea. It's not at all surprising, but he thinks that's nuts. Okay, that's enough listening to him. Let's look at what people have actually said about this stuff. Okay, so let me switch out here. Oh, I gotta figure out how to do everything. Stop that share. Let's go to a different screen. Okay, I gotta find it here. Like I said, I have not had to use this in so long. Okay, was that it? Might be it. I don't know. The big lag in the YouTube display is putting me off. We'll see. We'll let it catch up just a minute to make sure I'm looking at the right screen. Okay, so anyway. Yeah, I think that's the right one. Anyway. All right, you're supposed to show me that window though, you stupid thing. Let's see if I can get this to work again. So there we are. Just share that window, please. And it's sharing everything, but all right. Let me just see if I expand this. That'll be a little better. All right, anyway. So what are we looking at here? So Matt Powell used this article to ridicule the idea, the first idea that, oh, dinosaurs may have farted themselves to death. First of all, let's look at the quality of his source. That's a movie review channel. This isn't a bunch of scientists writing about this. This is an abuse of the idea, actually. So yeah, some scientists published some actual stories about this. Riley Black, I really respect Riley Black's work. He's a very good writer. Wrote a more serious article about this. He wrote, let's see, here we are. So this is an article on Smithsonian, and he points out something that Matt Powell will never admit: the media blows hot air about dinosaur flatulence. Yeah. So what Riley is pointing out is that no, that's not true, what they're saying. In fact, he reads the original article and he points out this important thing. First of all, that the article does not claim that dinosaurs farted themselves to death. It does not anywhere discuss extinction. But here's what the article actually did. They paired estimates of sauropod population size derived from the fossil record, data. So we're looking at data here. And they're looking in a particular slice of time, 150 million years ago. And then they also made an estimate of how much methane each dinosaur would produce. And again, that's based on data. Looking at modern day mammals, you can estimate, if you have this diet, how much methane are you going to produce? And there's room for error in there, but it's an initial first estimate. And again, so far everything is based on data, isn't it? Let's look at the fossil record, see how many of these big apatosaurs were walking around. Let's look at modern animals and ask how much methane do they produce? And then we can estimate the population size of these dinosaurs and figure out how much methane they would have produced per year. And they would have produced about 520 million metric tons of methane. And okay. Boy, that's a lot of gas coming out of these, but it's kind of what you'd expect. And then they compare that to what we're pumping out, what humanity is pumping out, and it's about the same. So this is close to what human beings are doing. So does that lead to our extinction? At least not yet. But what they're saying is this might have created and sustained the relatively warm world of the dinosaurs. Yeah, so it's answering another question. Why were things in the Jurassic a little warmer, significantly warmer than they are now? And one reason might be the biological production of these gases. Hey, that seems like a fabulous idea. Yeah, that's reasonable. It's nothing crazy here, even if Matt Powell would like you to think it is. Okay, what else did Matt Powell say? He also ridiculed the idea of squids from space. And I got to tell you, he's right. It's a ridiculous idea. I ridiculed it too. So here I have, this is an article I wrote. So squids from space. Yeah, I read this article and it was absurd. And look at that roster of names here. I recognize so many of these names. These are all professional kooks. Okay, this is fringiest of the fringe science. Yeah, there's Ted Steele. He was the guy who argued for Lamarckian evolution. Let's see who else we got here. Oh, Brig Kleiss. He's always been there for panspermia. I remember him from the old Usenet days. Let's see who else we got here. A lot I don't know. Milton Wainwright, some British guy who's been in a lot of their stuff. Jamie Wallace, a member of parliament, also a kook. Then we also have, of course, Wickramasinghe. This guy was a former student of Hoyle's, and he's been riding this hobby horse for decades now. It's everything came from outer space, according to Wickramasinghe, that he's been just publishing this drivel all over the place. Usually I see him in things like the Journal of Cosmology, which is also a very fringe source. This is the one that's run by Ron Joseph, who's utterly I won't say it because we don't want to get demonetized. He's a crazy guy, in a pejorative sense. He doesn't like me at all. Yeah, we've clashed a number of times. But anyway, what this story was he claims that octopus, cephalopods in general, are genetically and biologically distinct from other organisms on planet Earth. And no, that's not true. Yeah, the cephalopods have a number of unusual characteristics in their genome, but it's nothing so radical that it's not derived from terrestrial ancestors. We can see the affinities between cephalopod genes and other molluscan genes. We've got a good picture of how they evolved. So like I mentioned here, cephalopods do a lot of gene editing. That is, they synthesize RNA, and then there's enzymes that go in and tweak the RNA. So that happens a fair amount in cephalopods, but other organisms do this as well. It's nothing spectacular. So, what we've got here, this is the bottom line. This paper presents no evidence. And if you read the paper, what you'll discover, the only person it cites is Chandra Wickramasinghe and his cronies. It's terrible. It's like, oh, they're just here goes my monetization. They're just jerking each other off. And it's just a gigantic circle jerk of this small coterie of weird fringe panspermists. It has nothing at all to do with real science. So yeah, when our good buddy Matt Powell says this is stupid and foolish, he is actually agreeing with the consensus view of the majority of scientists in the world that he's ridiculous. So you can't accuse evolution of going bad with that. Okay, what else did he? Oh, he also talked about the rafting business, right? This is another one, and this one is perfectly reasonable. So here's another. This is a CNN news story, but we'll get to some other stuff in a moment. So this is a crew of now extinct monkeys made a treacherous transatlantic journey on a natural raft from Africa to settle in South America around 35 million years ago. And that's determined by the presence of uniquely primate teeth. Now, this, again, is using scientific evidence to reach a conclusion that we know that there were primates on the African mainland that sometime around 35 million years ago ended up on the South American mainland. How did they get there? Do you think they just jumped? No. So the most likely explanation is this whole idea of floating islands of vegetation, that tropical storms can get pretty ferocious and dump these things in the sea, and then they drifted across. These kinds of floating islands have been observed. Again, it's empirical data-based evidence here. They've been observed and sometimes even have trees on them. Uprooted trees that are floating along there, which would provide fruit for a little while for a voyage across the ocean. I imagine the poor little monkeys were dehydrated and exhausted and hungry and jumped off at the first chance they could when they saw South America. And then they found a whole new lineage of primates on that continent. This is not at all surprising. Matt Powell thinks it is. But I have news for Matt Powell, because guess who else endorses this idea? Yeah, this is Answers in Genesis. Answers in Genesis thinks this is a really good idea. They like this idea, not to explain, the actual facts of the distribution of species on planet Earth as they happened, but because they have this biblical problem that they believe in this thing called the flood that killed everything, and then this giant boat grounded on a mountain in Turkey with all the animals on there, and the animals all had to get to their final destination to spread out and repopulate the world. And somehow the kangaroos got across to Australia, and the New World monkeys had to have gotten across to South America. All these animals had, yeah, it's Noah, right? How can you argue with Noah that somehow these had to get across these vast bodies of water? And the explanation that they offer, and according to Steve Austin, who's kind of an idiot anyway, in his PhD dissertation, he said, okay, there was a floating mat model. There was all these logs and things that were uprooted in the flood, and they're just kind of piling up in there and getting compressed and making things like coal and oil. All right. But it's also a way that, this is how, okay, so look there. John Morris likes this idea. He posited that insects could have survived the flood on floating vegetation. So, and there's Kurt Wise, all these people from the creationist literature who are going to be kind of embarrassed that Matt Powell thinks their idea is ridiculous. I mean, how else does Matt Powell explain the dispersion of animals after the flood was over? So yeah, these ideas have been around. And it's not just Answers in Genesis. Here's another one. This is Creation Ministries International. they make the same argument. Natural rafts carried animals around the globe. Again, after the Great Flood, which didn't happen. So why is he objecting to this? Okay, it's because he's not very bright. Yeah. Let me take a look here and see what people are saying in the chat. Okay. Yeah. So here, yeah, this is a good question. How does something from another planet have the same kind of genetic setup as Earth species, coincidentally? They wouldn't. There's so much natural variation, and we can trace the lineage of these species back and back and back. We can see who's related to who. And I know that Kent and Matt hate this, but yeah, when you look at the genetic sequence of all these organisms, we're all related. Yeah, we really are related to mosquitoes. Very distantly. There's about 600, 700 million years of divergence from the last common ancestor of mosquitoes and humans. But yeah, we can see, this was the big deal in Evo Devo in the 1980s, is we had finally got all these tools to sequence things, and we had identified all these developmental genes. And we go looking and we find, for instance, Hox genes in insects and Hox genes in mice and in people and all these things. Yeah, everything's linked here. So, yeah. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. Easy, have you never heard of flying monkeys? Oh, that's the answer. Yeah, I saw that movie too. Okay, another point here. We're talking about Matt Powell official. Yes, they all live in Kent Hovind's compound and allegedly beat their wives. Yeah, it's depressing that people follow them seriously. I agree. Yeah, there is no virtue in these guys. They're very silly people. Okay. So let me switch gears a little bit. So I said I was going to talk about bat evolution. This is another example of good science demonstrating the relationship of different organisms. But first, I also ran into a couple of other little things I found amusing. And I just want to bring up some quick bites here of things. Here's one that just horrified me. Sean Penn. Yeah, we don't you love Sean Penn? He's a good actor. He's also a bit of an ass. Okay. So here's a few comments from him. He made some comments that I'm in the club that believes that men in American culture have become wildly feminized. Okay, guys, y'all feel feminine today? And then he doubles down and he gives us his reasoning behind this. He says, there are a lot of, I think, cowardly genes. Okay, show me a cowardly gene. Explain the evidence behind this whole idea of cowardly genes. He says that lead to people surrendering their genes. Oh, that was a clever plan. And putting on a skirt. And furthermore, he noted the women in his life don't seem bothered by the patriarchy. Oh, well, that's persuasive. Yeah, here's an old man. I shouldn't say that. He's younger than I am. He's what, 3 years younger than I am. Oh, okay, just a stupid man then. So here he is. He's blinkered himself, and he sees only women who agree with him, apparently. So he's a rich, powerful guy with a lot of influence in Hollywood. And so, of course, there's going to be people who are going to say yes to whatever he says. And there are naturally many women who have bought into the patriarchy. So, yeah, and he's considered a leftist. Is he really? Not really. He's something of a misogynist as far as I'm concerned. Okay, that's enough of Sean Penn. Let's get into the good news, the great science news. This is exciting. There's these spiders, the Brazilian wandering spider, that are known. They've got nasty bites, and they've got a venom that affects human beings. And I've read the folklore. There's lots of stuff from people who in South America who are at risk for these things. And one of the symptoms that you've been bitten by Phonutria is erections. You naturally get just an instant inflammation. So this is very exciting to the pharmaceutical companies, I'm sure. Yeah, something to replace Viagra and Cialis and all that kind of stuff. So they're investigating this. They've isolated the peptide, and it's just a small peptide that causes this effect. And what did they say here? Yeah, it's affecting the nitric oxide pathway. Same thing that Viagra does. So it's a new compound, a new simple peptide that affects the nitric oxide pathway and leads to vasodilation of vessels through the penis. Okay. Yeah. So I keep telling you guys, it's important to study spiders. And here, obviously, is why it's valuable to study spiders if you're a man. Strangely, most of the people I know studying spiders are women. But this is a fairly minor side effect. This is the only spider I know of whose bite has this side effect. So take that for what you will. Okay, let's see. Where did I go? I got to find. Yeah, I've got it right now. I've got a screen that is full of things. Oh, there I am. Let's stop sharing. Hi there. I'm back. So, we're right on schedule. This is good. I want to finish by the end of an hour. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is some recent bit of science that just came out. So it was just published online this week. So we're cutting edge. This is new. And it's on a subject I didn't know much about. So I found it very interesting. This is what I wish creationists would do. They'd realize that there's a lot of stuff they don't know, and it's in the literature. It's in the scientific literature. You can go read this stuff and get exposed to all these new and interesting ideas that are far more interesting than trying to shoehorn all of science into Noah's Ark or whatever. So yeah, this one, let's again, I'm switching screens again. Come back. Where are you? Like I said, I got way too many things. Oh, there we go. All right, there it is. So this is a little article titled Evolution of Inner Ear Neuroanatomy of Bats and Implications for Echolocation. And again, we're looking at the application of evidence to evolutionary hypotheses. We are testing ideas about evolution. Now, once upon a time, when I was studying all this vertebrate taxonomy and vertebrate anatomy and everything, the big split, the one that everyone talked about in my ancient, back when I was taking classes with Aristotle, my ancient biology classes, was that we could split bats into two clades, the Megachiroptera and the Microchiroptera. Okay, so things like the little brown bats that we have flying around here in Minnesota, that's Microchiroptera, and then things like flying foxes, those great big frugivorous bats, those were Megachiroptera. Seems easy enough, right? Makes sense. There's been a bit of a shift lately because, as molecular tools become available, we can do that thing that Matt Powell thinks we can't do, which is examine the degree of relatedness between different species. So we can take all the sequence data from a huge variety of bats, and we can compare them and ask who's most closely related to who. And when they do this, a different hypothesis falls out. And it's identified here that they now say that there's two suborders, which this is not my field. I didn't know much about it. There are these two suborders, Yin Pterochiroptera and Yangochiroptera. Why couldn't they have picked something easier to pronounce? Yeah, anyway, they've identified these two suborders, and they distinguish them on the basis of microanatomy of their inner ear, which is a little bit more robust than saying, oh, big bats versus little bats, okay? And they're just examining these structures, and here's an illustration of what they find. So this is a bat, obviously, and there's the skull of a bat, and this is the inner ear. There's that cochlea and all that. There's all this other cool stuff, all the things in the inner ear. And what they point out is that there's a distinct difference between these different suborders of bats. That here, if we unfold this coil, just straighten it out so we can see it all, there's a couple of differences that we can spot right away between them. That many of these bats have this foraminal wall, which is illustrated in this picture in B. And what that is that there's a spiral ganglion, a nerve and cells, nerve cells that are separated from the canal of the ear, and they are in something called Rosenthal's canal. Okay, so we got this canal here with a wall separating them out. And what you find is if you look in different bats, you can find this range of degrees of perforation of that wall. So some of them, they call fenestral, we got large windows in there, so they actually have direct access. And then there are wall-less ones. They've gotten rid of the wall altogether. And this is a nice distinguishing characteristic. Okay, so this is what you're looking for when you're trying to distinguish different lineages. You're asking, okay, what makes this bat different from this other bat? Okay, so this is one feature they identified that is consistent, that holds up pretty well. And when they group the bats by this character, which wasn't actually recognized before, you get some interesting trees emerging from this. And this is another thing. If you're into taxonomic trees and classification, what they do is they throw a lot of characters into a computer model. Models. Yes, anyway, throw it into a computer model to analyze, who's most similar to who else. And you got to balance a whole lot of characters. It's not a trivial task. It's time intensive, computer time intensive. It takes a lot of number crunching to work it out. And then you come up with an optimal tree, the one that most describes the relatedness on the basis of the most characters, that sort of thing. Again, there's lots of rules and models about how you do this. And when you do this sort of thing, what you get falling out of it is the Yin Chiroptera and the Yango. Again, I don't know how to pronounce this. Yangochiroptera. Yeah, the yin and the yangs, all right, those pop out in this tree, and they seem to be distinctly different. So they're looking at these. And the curious thing about this, the thing that made me sit up, is these characters cross the old clades that we thought of. So Megachiroptera and some Megachiroptera and some Microchiroptera are grouped in the yins, and others are grouped in the yangs. So this is lovely stuff. This is what I like to see, is scientists making hypotheses and going out and collecting lots and lots of data and testing it, seeing how well it fits their models. And, for instance, if you're thinking, oh, mega corruptor and micro corruptor, that's the answer. You go out and you test that and you look at the data, and this is saying that this doesn't work out very well. That those don't seem to be consistent clades. And yet, if we take this other approach and we look at the structure of the bony parts of the inner ear, we can see a unifying character that groups the clades in ways that hold up much, much better. So that's what this whole paper is all about. There's a lot of detail here. I won't get into it. Lots of illustrations. This is the kind of thing I wish creationists would recognize, is when you look at these papers, what you find is typically they tell us, in a journal like Nature, like this one, you got a compressed, condensed story that you tell up front, and then you bury in the appendices and all this stuff, this mountain of data that supports your ideas. So there's a whole bunch of data. There's all these trees. There's all this anatomical stuff. There's all these micrographs of the structure, and they all link it all together. Now, in the case of bats, this is what you have to do, because unfortunately, bats do not fossilize well. So we don't have good fossil bats, which Matt Powell would jump on in triumph and say, well, obviously then they were created. No, because we also have this other class of evidence. We have the molecular evidence, we have the anatomical evidence, and we can see how these are related and how they come together. For instance, one of the conclusions we can make from this paper is that echolocation was the big thing. That bats made two great leaps forward many millions of years ago, and they were flight, obviously, getting good at flight, and the other is echolocation. And those two together are entwined, and they are the secret to the success of all of these different groups of bats. The article also points out there's other details. I've read a little bit about the neurology of audition in bats. It's messy, complicated stuff. I know bats can detect phase, the phase of the echo coming back to them. It's not just the timing, but also the phase, which tells them things like, is that moth fluttering? Are its wings flapping? And they can tell because of the phase differences that generate in the echo coming back to them. So that's exciting science. That's what I wish everybody could look at. Okay, so I really don't want to go over an hour, so I'm going to wrap this up there. Sorry, Nelsie, you're late. It's all being recorded. It'll be okay. Let's see. We got comments up here. Yeah, nitric oxide. Yeah. Yes, I knew people would be excited about the spider venom that causes erections. So I see we got a bit of discussion there about that. Yeah, it affects nitric oxide pathways. Let's see what else. Oh, Martin McKee. I always thought a pet flying fox would be fun. I've worked next door to a lab that studied bats, and they had the flying foxes there, and they were so spectacular and so fun to see. And they were very friendly animals too. I was surprised. So the handlers would come out at lunchtime, and there'd be this gigantic 3-foot-long bat hanging from their arm, and they'd just bring it out to the lunch area of the science building, and we could feed them, fruit and stuff like that. But they were charming animals. Yeah, and they got big eyes, big expressive eyes. They really do look like little foxes. They're just beautiful. Let's see. What else we got here? Oh, sorry, brain bug. Yeah, I cut Matt Powell off right before he whined about brain bug. Yeah, he's. Oh man, I'm sorry. Did you really want me to let Matt drag your name through the mud there? Because he didn't have anything intelligent to say about anything. I just gave a short excerpt. Let's see, other comments here. Most fundamentalists don't have the interest or patience to thoroughly read the Bible. I think they're capable of comprehending a hard science publication. You're right. And you can't begrudge them for that. I don't expect everyone in the world to read this relatively dense paper about bat classification and bat auditory anatomy or things like that. And that's fair. You shouldn't have to read all of that stuff. But, at the same time, if you haven't read it, you shouldn't come charging out and say it's wrong, right? You cannot do that. I would also say that I would turn that around on them. You read my science papers and I'll read your Bible, since I already have. This was the substance of my recent challenge to Kent Hovind, is not to debate anyone, not to debate me, but for him to actually read a popular science book. And no, he refused. He was actually very confused. He seemed to think I was talking about another debate, and no, I wasn't. Oh yeah, Nelsie, I remember a Hammer horror movie that used a flying fox as a scary bat, and it really wasn't. Yeah, and also Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. They keep showing these scenes of the spooky place with the big bats flying all over the place. They were just flying foxes. They were absolutely charming animals. I didn't find them scary at all. Okay, so some people are already leaving. You got to go eat dinner. I don't blame you. I ate dinner early. I made a tofu burrito tonight. It was okay. I got to work on it a little bit. But yeah, I didn't make it very spicy out of concern for my wife. I'm going to ease her in on the spicy stuff. Okay, well, that's a good place to end then, almost precisely on an hour. So should I do this again next week or something? Yeah, part of my reasoning is I am so buried in work right now that I don't have time to do the careful preparation and script writing and getting it all ready and pulling it together for a more formal video. But I can sit here and talk about things, so I did. Okay, well, so thanks for stopping by. And I'm glad y'all popped in. How many people did we get here today? I should look. Oh, let's see. Ooh, 40 concurrent viewers. That's a record for me. We're doing good. Yeah, the other thought is my other videos are so dry, and I'm not trying to make them, exciting about conflicts and contradictory stuff. So I need a little bit of that to liven it up a bit. Yeah, okay. Last question. Did you see Hovind's dissertation? Yes. Yes, of course I have. All anti-evolution or anti-creationists have read his dissertation. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. I first saw a copy when I visited the NCSE, National Center for Science Education offices. They have it in their bathroom, which I think is the appropriate place to put it. Oh yes, Temple of Doom with the scary insects are all stick and leaf. Yeah, those were all harmless insects in that movie. It was, yeah. Let's build a story on entomophobia. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you for coming by, and we will talk to you all. Maybe I'll do it again next week or the week after or something. I don't know. You can tell I'm winging it all here. So again, thanks for stopping by. I should mention, the like and subscribe stuff. Go do that. I also have a Patreon. I'll put a link to it there. I will link to some of the stuff I talked about here in the thing down below. And we'll see you later.